with my co-host, CoinDesk Indices Head of Product and Research, Andy Bear. Our next guest is dedicated to attracting foreign direct investment to Hong Kong, enhancing the city's financial services ecosystem. He works closely with major fintech shareholders, including institutions, accelerators, and regulators. Please welcome Global Head of Financial Services, Fintech, and Sustainability at Invest Hong Kong, King Leung. Hello.
Well, thank you for having me, Jen and Andy.
Thank you for being here. Lay the foundation for us. Talk to us a little bit about what you do at Invest Hong Kong and why it's important for you to be here at Consensus, where our main focus is on emerging technologies like crypto, AI, and Web3.
Well, first of all, I have to say that not just myself, but the entire community is super excited that Consensus is in Hong Kong. Many of us have been traveling to the US version for many years, so we're just so glad that this day finally comes. Now, of course, at Invest Hong Kong, our role is to help to bring in overseas companies, including from all the international markets and mainland China to Hong Kong. And our job is to essentially help them navigate and to succeed in terms of connecting to business, connecting to investments, capital, the government subsidies and whatnot. Now, but at the same time, we also play a very important role, and that is to help essentially execute many policies to essentially help new policies such as in crypto, virtual assets to be widely known and adopted.
We had Gary Liu from Web3 Harbor at the desk earlier today. I asked him this question, but I have to ask you as well. For a long time, Hong Kong had this regulatory competitive advantage over the United States. It looks like the United States may catch up this year. When you think about bringing firms to Hong Kong, what does that mean for you, that there's going to be more competition here? What's your strategy?
Well, the strategy is essentially, as I just mentioned, is to help enhance awareness and adoption. Now, yes, this is very exciting. Again, the US is now coming in full force. But after all, you look at the market cap for crypto by itself, is what, like 3.3 trillion, roughly? It's still tiny compared to the other capital market, which is hundreds of trillions. So that's why we're just so excited that now more players are coming in to grow the pie. And Hong Kong is playing a very important role, particularly in the Asian market.
Have you sort of embody what your institution does. I remember the first time that we met and you explained what Invest Hong Kong does. You're sort of a reverse ambassador, right? Bringing people in. But Hong Kong, in order for crypto to become more of a well-used financial market, we need the exchanges, the banks, the regulators. I think all of us kind of wish things were accelerating faster. How do you see that pace? How do you see the velocity? Are things picking up a little bit now?
Well, I have to say definitely it's accelerating, but at the same time it's at a very steady pace in which we've been hearing a lot from the industry players. Again, you talk to the industry leaders across Hong Kong and overseas, right. They'll tell you that our policymakers and the regulators, leaders are very welcoming and open-minded. So that's why there have been numerous closed-door meetings that our leaders in the governments have been hearing from the market in terms of where are the gaps that we need to address, so that we're able to make a more conducive environment for companies to thrive and generate more profits. So that's why, again, as we hear more and more, then the government are prioritizing the launching of different policies and regulations to make this easier and easier. So this is an ongoing process.
What are some of those gaps that need to be addressed?
Well, again, so at the end of the day, there are just so many things that we heard from the markets, like stablecoins. People have been asking for this regulated stablecoins for so long, and this is coming along quite nicely, in which our regulator, HMA, have already submitted to our Legislative Council, which is kind of the equivalent of the Congress in the US. Now, so that's one part in which we are hopeful that the stablecoin regulatory regime will come through soon. So when that happens, then we have the digital money to then pay for all kinds of tokenized assets that have been minted and generated over the past few years. So that's why once some of these items come through, this will accelerate. And the other things that people talk about would be things like maybe the OTC regulatory regime, in which our regulator, SFC, is looking at very closely. So I think there are many more items, like the custodian, the virtual asset custodian regime. These are the things that our colleagues at SFC and HMA are actively looking at to try to, again, fill the needs of the markets. So in short, the leaders in policymaking and regulating have been hearing loud and clear what the market needs, and we are addressing them.
So I guess part of this is the financialization and adopting a digital asset class into the financial fabric, but initiatives like stablecoins is about changing people's lives, right? It's about making things more convenient, unlocking a new tier of convenience. Um, when you think about the demand coming in, it feels like it's more from the convenience and technological improvement side than the investment side. Is that true? And are stablecoins sort of the purest example of that?
Well, I think that I'm glad you asked, Andy. In fact, this is something that dear to our hearts. Now, of course, I think as many people look at Hong Kong, we have been playing the bridge role for decades. Essentially, there have been so many exporters, the e-commerce players from mainland China, selling things to the rest of the world, including many emerging markets, the Africa, Latin, the GCC, Southeast Asian markets, and so on. Now, again, we look at stablecoins. This is not just B2C. A lot of the B2B use cases, I mean, it's just very obvious that many of the billions of trade across markets via Hong Kong can be settled using stablecoin that can reduce the transaction time from, say, a week down to almost instantaneous. Right. And also they can lower the costs. So you can imagine if you are even large corporates or the SMEs doing cross-border trade via Hong Kong, this is going to be enormous savings and increased convenience. So this is far beyond just B2C.
This would probably be one of the most impressive demonstrations of adoption of public blockchains. So is that comfort level with public blockchains to the point where important project like this can reside, or is there some sense that private or semi-private blockchains may be necessary?
Well, the short answer is, as we talk to our regulators, again, they are highly intelligent, very informed, and also very open-minded. Now, the one thing that as we talk to our regulator colleagues, and also including some conversations with the private sector, one thing is clear, is that it's hard to pick the winner, so to speak, right? Just pick one chain, it's hard. So that's why our regulators are taking a very pragmatic approach by building the bridges, essentially enabling interoperability of multiple chains that can be private chain, can be public chains, and then essentially we just want to create that secure infrastructure so that the different chains can talk to each other. So the rest would be increased convenience for more adoption by the TradFi mainstream players.
Now, just before we go, I got to ask you on the topic of stablecoins. I know Hong Kong has been exploring retail and wholesale CBDCs. Now we have the stablecoin regime here. Is there any conversation happening like stablecoins versus CBDCs? How do they coexist?
Well, this is a great question. In fact, I guess if you ask anybody, nobody can tell you the real answer. Because at the end of the day,
that's why I asked.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's really up to the market forces, right? So that's why, as I just said, our regulators are taking a very pragmatic approach. They listen to the market. They say, okay, if there's a need for CBDC, they develop it. They develop stablecoins, answering to the market needs. And then in terms of how this play out, it will be up to the very innovative private sector leaders to figure out the use cases, the right tool to the right use case. So I think the market will tell us very soon.
King, thank you so much for joining us here at the desk.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Again, go consensus.
Go consensus.
Go consensus.